In 168 BC, as the sun coloured the morning sky, detachments of Roman and Macedonian troops gathered at the Leucas River to quench their thirst. Their shared goal of fetching water, accomplished by 2 cohorts and a cavalry guard on the Roman side, reflected a potential integration between the Macedonians. A fragile truce prevailed in the face of this shared need. However, during the afternoon, a Roman mule ran away, and its escape became the catalyst for the unrest that followed. Pursued by 3 soldiers, its hooves fell into the water. Its escape was an unexpected prelude to a series of events that would change the course of history. Led by 2 Thracians from the Macedonian ranks, the mule strayed to the enemy's side, a daring ploy that turned deadly when a Roman soldier killed a Thracian. The aftermath of this encounter shattered the truce, forcing the Macedonian army to cross the river. Thus began the Battle of Pydna. In 168 BC, the Macedonian king Perseus rose to power through controversial means and was implicated in the execution of his brother and the death of his father. Despite the growing influence of Rome and resistance from neighbouring Greece, Perseus was able to enhance Macedonia's wealth, military power and population. Around the same time, Rome's influence increased following the Second Punic War, which led to the defeat of the Carthaginian general Hannibal. Rome now focused on defending its influence in the Mediterranean and Aegean seas. The Italian countryside had been depopulated by the war, forcing Rome to rely heavily on slave labour and conscription. Nevertheless, Rome remained the dominant power in the region. Rome's victory over Philip V of Macedon at the Battle of Cynocephala in 197 BC is attributed to its flexible formation, which allowed greater manoeuvrability than the Greek phalanx. In 190 BC, the Aetolians, Rome's allies in the Aegean Sea, dissatisfied with Rome's terms with Philip, sought an alliance with Antiochus, the Hellenistic king of the Seleucid Empire, to challenge Rome's influence. Antiochus sought to penetrate Anatolia and Greece by defeating the Romans. A battle erupted at Magnesia in Lydia, where a Roman-Greek army under the consul Lucius Cornelius Scipio confronted Antiochus's forces. The Roman infantry resisted Antiochus's Macedonian contingent, defeating the Seleucids. Antiochus fled after his left flank collapsed, and Rome ordered him to surrender. They demanded his surrender and the surrender of the lands west of the Taurus Mountains. Unrest continued for 2 decades as Greece and Anatolia fell under Roman administration. Rome intervened in small-scale conflicts using Roman garrisons stationed in the region. It was suspicious of the intentions of most of the defeated states, especially Macedonia under Philip. The Thessalians and Eumenes of Pergamum filed complaints with Rome regarding Philip V, prompting Rome to investigate. Philip sent his younger son, Demetrius, to Rome in an attempt to prevent the conflict from escalating. Amid the brutal politics of the Macedonian court, a power struggle ensued between him and his illegitimate eldest son, Perseus. This conflict culminated in Demetrius's death. Philip died shortly thereafter, and Perseus assumed control of the kingdom. He maintained Macedonia's hostility to Rome while renewing its alliances. He also rallied support from political exiles and those under Roman influence. The pro-Roman Achaean League condemned his efforts, but Perseus continued to stir up anti-Roman sentiment throughout the region. Gentius, king of the Illyrians, had originally been a Roman ally, but tried to play both sides. The Thracian Cotys IV, king of the kingdom of Odrysia, the largest state in Thrace, supported Perseus. Rome's Gallic allies also roamed the region, eager to accept bribes and betray their allies. Roman commissioners were sent to assess the situation in Greece, and Eumenes presented Perseus's crimes to the Senate. War seemed inevitable. The Roman Senate decided to send troops to Greece. 40 ships were dispatched under Gaius Lucretius, and 2,000 soldiers were sent to occupy Larissa, the capital of Thessaly, to prevent Perseus from fortifying the city. The main army advanced under the Roman consul Publius Licinius Crassus. In preparation for war, Perseus's army expanded. The cohort focused on infantry, given the local terrain's unsuitability for cavalry. However, the cohort suffered from limitations. lacking mobility and effectiveness in mountainous terrain. As Crassus advanced, the two armies met at Callinicus in Thessaly. A pitched battle ensued, resulting in a resounding Macedonian victory. A stalemate developed between the two armies at the Elbe River. The situation did not bode well for the Romans. The Senate realized the fragility of their position and the urgent need for a Roman victory. In 168 BC, the Roman Senate chose Lucius Aemilius Paullus, an experienced general unconcerned with personal gain, to confront Perseus. A commission sent to Greece to assess the situation uncovered the confrontation at the Elbe River. Appius Claudius's forces in Illyricum proposed a siege of the Macedonians. However, no serious action was taken yet. Perseus attempted to exploit his alliances with the Gauls and King Gentius of Ardea to incite Rome to war. He did not pay the Gauls as promised, forcing them to withdraw across the Danube. However, King Getius, a Roman ally, was impressed by the generous offer and arrested the Roman envoys. News of this reached Lucius Aemilius Paullus and the Senate, prompting them to prepare. Paullus mustered a legion of approximately 14,000 infantry and 1,200 cavalry. He crossed the Adriatic Sea into Greece, while Lucius Anicius Gallus, with 10,000 soldiers and 400 cavalry, headed for Illyricum. Within a month, Gallus captured Gentius, just as Paullus was advancing on the Roman forces at Elpius. Paullus used a diversionary feint against Perseus's northern forces, sending a large force under his son Publius Scipio Nasica around the mountains to attack Perseus's rear. While the Cretan soldiers fled to Perseus, Nasica's 2,000 troops encountered a larger Macedonian force and were victorious. Nasica took poor defensive passes and descended to strike at Perseus's camp. Fearing he would be trapped between Paullus and Nasica, Perseus retreated north and established a new camp near Catarrhini, south of Pydna. The convergence of the armies of Nasica and Paullus near Diomede led to a stalemate for Perseus's forces across the Leucos River. Perseus's chosen flat terrain was neutralized as the Romans established themselves on unfavorable ground, while their encampment on Mount Jo hindered Macedonian unity. The lunar eclipse of June 22, 168 BC led to divergent interpretations. The Romans considered it a favorable omen, while the Macedonians believed it portended their downfall. The Romans had between 29,000 and 38,600 soldiers, 2,600 cavalry, and 22 war elephants. The Macedonians, on the other hand, numbered around 43,000, including 20,000 cavalry and 4,000 horsemen. Both sides hesitated to engage in battle the next morning. In the scorching summer heat, detachments took refuge in the Leucos River for water. However, the tacit agreement not to attack each other was broken when a Roman mule strayed into the water, resulting in a skirmish. Roman soldiers killed a Macedonian who was trying to retrieve the mule. The Romans eagerly prepared for battle upon hearing of the initial skirmish and seized the opportunity to turn the incident into an advantage. As the Romans prepared for battle, Perseus also rallied his forces. His men persuaded him to advance against the Romans despite his already advantageous position. Paullus likely positioned his legions in the centre, surrounded by his allies and cavalry, facing Perseus's advancing division. At his rear stood his war elephants. Perseus's division included powerful Thracians, mercenaries, and elite Macedonians. According to Livy, the sight of the heavily armed Macedonian troops initially terrified Paul and his army. On the lower slopes of Mount Olokros, the Roman right line, composed of Italian allies and cavalry, attempted to repel the Macedonians but encountered difficulties. Despite repeated prodding, the Roman line gradually retreated, forced back by the advancing Macedonians. The clip highlights the initial violent clash, the sight of the massive Macedonian phalanx, and the ensuing struggle between the Roman forces and the advancing Macedonians. As the Macedonians advanced up the mountain, their initial advantage was diminished by the rugged terrain of Mount Olokros. The Macedonian phalanx began to disintegrate as parts of the army moved to different parts of the mountain, creating gaps and chaos in their ranks. Paul astutely recognized this and divided his ranks to exploit gaps in the Macedonian formation. The Romans fought multiple separate battles within the Macedonian ranks, attacking from different angles and exploiting the rugged terrain. This strategy shattered the cohesion of the Macedonian phalanx. The rugged terrain tore through the Macedonian ranks, allowing Roman units to slip through the gaps and attack effectively. Eventually, the Macedonian cavalry stationed on the flanks, sensing defeat, withdrew from the battle. Perseus himself fled, leaving his army vulnerable. Livy writes, "The cavalry left the battle almost unscathed. Perseus himself led the flight." While the Macedonian infantry was left vulnerable, the Romans launched a relentless attack from all sides, front, rear and flank. The Macedonian cavalry was able to escape with its formation intact, as the Romans were preoccupied with dealing with the infantry. This chaos allowed the Romans to engage in a prolonged slaughter, resulting in the rout of the Macedonian forces. Some Macedonian survivors attempted to flee to the Gulf of Thessalonica, where they met further disaster. Many were drowned or killed by Roman ships that mistook them for friendly vessels. Roman elephants trampled those fleeing inland. The scale of the destruction was brutal, even by the standards of ancient warfare. In total, the Macedonians lost approximately 31,000 soldiers, including 20,000 killed and 11,000 captured. According to ancient sources, the Romans suffered no more than 100 casualties. Among the prisoners taken after the battle was the Greek historian Polybius, who would go on to document the rise of the Roman Republic's dominance in the Mediterranean in his comprehensive historical work. Following the crushing victory over the Macedonian army, Rome imposed harsh sanctions on Macedonia and its Aegean allies. Macedonia was dismantled and divided into 4 separate alliances, with cross-border marriage and trade alliances prohibited. The ruling class was transported to Rome, where show trials were held throughout Greece, resulting in numerous executions. Similar measures were also taken against Illyricum and Epirus. The defeat of Macedonia marked a turning point in Rome's history, cementing its position as the strongest regional power. Eventually, the Roman consul Paullus, victorious at the Battle of Pydna, invited the Greek historian Polybius to his home to tutor his sons. In fact, Rome's victory over Pydna contributed to the rapprochement between Roman and Hellenistic cultures.